Welcome to Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John, and that's Richard. Hey.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm okay. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you. Thanks for joining us. We've got a lot going on this week. We have our 2020 picks in review. All the picks that Richard and I told you guys about. What was our batting average? How did we do? Were we good? Were we bad? Should you stop listening to us? Should you take everything we say as gospel? Spoiler alert, a little bit of both. But we're honest about it at least, right?
Yeah. We did okay.
I think okay. You know what they say in baseball? If you're batting 350, you're a Hall of Famer. So I just need a 35% average. Hey, if you're not following us on Instagram and Facebook, do that at Bronze and Modern Gods. See it up there. Give us a like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. It really helps us out. It shows our videos to more people, and it just makes us feel better. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform and you haven't left us a review, that would make my insecurity go away a bit. That would be nice.
It would be nice. Help John out.
Please help us both out. And let's get started with our hot book of the week. I don't think there's really any debate here. Again, it's one of those weeks where it's just so dominant that it's Amazing Spider-Man 55, or as I call it, the Charlotte's Web edition.
That's a good name for it. That is a very good name for it.
Pig.
For those of you listening and not watching, Amazing Spider-Man 55 has a completely black cover and then a profile of Spider-Man made out of spider webs with a spider right about where his ear is, I believe it is. It's a gorgeous cover done by Patrick Gleason. It's definitely a standout. There's some issues with this, though.
What's the issue?
Well, first of all, it's an A cover, right? This is the regular cover for this month. So there are a lot of this book.
Print run of 100,000 plus.
Right. So don't let someone trick you into thinking this is a rare book. My local LCS listed this book for $20 on the release day. I walk into my LCS. I go to my pull list. He hadn't pulled it yet, but on the shelf for Spider-Man 55s for $20, all bagged and boarded, which I thought was a little scummy. Hate to say it.
Did you have it on your pull list?
I had it on my pull. I've had Amazing Spider-Man on my pull list for a year.
And did he charge you cover or $20?
Well, he hadn't pulled it yet, and I was already in a situation where I had other copies because this was an A cover, right? So. Yeah. You know, you look at your previews and your pre-orders, you saw this book coming. I saw this book coming over a month ago. So I placed an online order with another company. So I had multiple copies of this book already coming. So picking up a copy at my LCS was more of a courtesy than necessary a necessity. So I just declined to give him my money. So he's out of my Spider-Man money for that particular week. But I hear this is not a one-off thing. This book was listing on eBay for about $20 right out of the gate. And again, this is an A cover. This is not some variant 1 in 50 or something like that. This is what you get when you order Spider-Man for this particular week.
I agree, but I think there's real, true excitement over the cool factor of this cover. And I think that's driving a lot of it. I think props to both my LCSs here. They had it on the shelf for cover price that morning. So they weren't trying to gouge people, but I've heard a lot of other stories to the contrary. But I think fans love this cover. They're obviously reacting. And I think people remember, I believe it was Detective Comics. What is it with the Batman cover where it's the Joker. Bats by Jock? You know, they see what that's done in that last few years. It's just a classic cover. That wasn't a variant. That wasn't a chase cover. That was just the regular cover, and it's really held its value. So this is kind of like Marvel's version of that Jock cover.
I could see that. That cover is very iconic. And, not to overuse the word, but you immediately know it's a memorable cover. It is a classic. And I could see this particular cover falling into that same category. It's just the business practices of the industry right now are counter what you would do if your customers were first in mind.
Right.
And I can understand to some degree, running a comic book store is a hard job. It is a very, very difficult job with razor thin margins. So if you have an opportunity to make those margins work so you could pay your bills for that month, I can understand that. But as a customer who is a regular, who comes in every week and I buy my pull list, even some weeks I just don't really want the books, but they're on my list. I've committed, so I buy them. I walk in and I see all of those A covers in a stack for $20 a piece, and not one in my pull list. I'm a little hurt.
I don't blame you. And he's cutting off his nose despite his face. I hear what you're saying about margins and how it's tough for retailers. However, he just lost all your money for the next year, didn't he?
Yeah. I opened a pull list with him to support him as a store, because I believe in supporting our local community and our local comic book stores. It's a place where you can walk in and you can, jaw jack for 20 minutes, either with him or with one of his patrons. I like having that as a local store. But to be honest with you, I get books cheaper. I buy from Things from Another World, tfaw.com. I get them for like 30% off, and they come, all boxed. I only buy books from my pull list because of that support. And if I don't feel like I'm being, I don't want to say appreciated, but at least,
appreciated's fair.
Yeah.
You're a customer, and you have been going there for how long?
Over a year and a half, since I got back into the hobby. So 2 years.
So, and you're spending on average how much a week?
Probably anywhere from 30 to 40, depending on.
Was that extra $15 worth it for him to lose you as a customer for the next 52 weeks? I would say no.
No. Anytime, just honor your customer. At least treat your long-term customers fairly. If you want to charge more for the people who don't have the book on your pull list, or who don't regularly come in and buy Spider-Man.
Yeah, when you see a shark like me walking there and start grabbing 3 or 4 off the shelf, yeah, jack it up, sure.
Yeah. So it kind of irked me, and it made me a little unhappy, and I will switch. I had started to switch to a lot of online, and I'm just going to complete that process and just buy books ahead of time.
That's a shame. I wish I lived back there. I'd open my store.
I know you would.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the grading process for this cover, because again, me, your friendly neighborhood presser, these are wrinkled as hell. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to press these to get a 9.8, and that black cover shows every imperfection. If you guys are not wearing gloves, I don't care what people in the comments say. You should be wearing gloves when handling this book, or you're not getting a 9.8.
Right. This cover the paper they use nowadays is just horrific. And this thing is, when you go and you buy it from your LCS, if you still are in the position to buy them off the shelf, look at every single copy you buy, because you want to make sure there aren't any pre-existing ticks or blended corners, because all that's going to count. I mean, when CGC gets this book in hand, they are going to be very, very strict on the grading because of all of that black. So you want to start off a solid basis.
I'm seeing a lot of blunting on the top corner of the spine and the bottom corner of the spine in a lot of the copies I've seen. So I don't know if there was a bindery issue with this, but these might be tough in 9.8. We're going to see. I also think we need to pay a little attention to the other covers. The Delato cover is nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's very nice. This book has some very nice covers. The story isn't so great. So you're really focusing on the quality of the cover, the what you feel the long-term value of that cover is, more than the story within the book itself. So there is a great cover with it's a PlayStation cover, Marvel's Spider-Man with Miles Morales on the cover. It's a great looking book. Pick that up as well if your LCS has a copy of it available.
All right, Spidey 55. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to hold. This one's going to hold its value, but we'll find out about some other books, and we've made that prediction about in a few minutes. Before we get to that, viewer mail.
You've got mail.
This week is from Eric Slaughter, which sounds like a WWE wrestler.
It does. It's awesome.
Eric Slaughter. Eric says, when we're talking about DC and the new distribution rules for DC, he heard retailers need to buy a certain amount of books or else they get nothing. They don't qualify to order. If you're a smaller shop, I can understand dropping DC if you can't unload the quota that's being forced upon you. Very true. A very good point. There is a minimum. The minimum, though, is $500 minimum retail price. $500 retail, not wholesale. So if you break that down at $3.99 a book, although most of them are $4.99 now, you're being asked to order 125 DC titles minimum for a month, or 31 books a week if you break it down for a 4-week month. So if you're ordering Batman, Detective, Death Metal, Superman, Action, okay, and you're ordering 10 copies of each, guess what? You already got 50 books
right
for the week. It's very achievable. If you're not selling at least 10 copies of Batman, you probably shouldn't be in business at this point, frankly. You can't sell 10 copies of Batman in your neighborhood. There's a problem there. So thank you, Eric. That's a very good point, and something that we did not hit. So I really appreciate you pointing that out, and so we can talk about that a bit.
Like you say, if you can't sell that number of DC books in the span of a month, you probably shouldn't be selling DC in the first place.
I mean, if it was 500 wholesale, where it's $1,000 retail, I get that. That's tough. But yeah, 500 is, I don't want to say it's chump change, but you can't sell 10 copies of 5 DC titles. Okay. Right. Our topic for this week is 2020, the dumpster fire of a year in review. While it was not the best year for a lot of things, it was a great year for comic book collecting. I mean, you got to look at the bright side here. We're all home. We're all sitting around with a little bit of, I can't believe nobody's using the Arrested Development stimmy. I got me some stimmy for the stimulus money. I'm using it all the time. And we're seeing crazy things happen in the market. So every week you guys hear us talk about our underrated books of the week, our hot picks of the week. So let's review what we talked about in 2020 and see how we did. Our winners and losers. You go first. Let's hit the winners first.
One of the obvious winners for me was good old Ultimate Fallout #4. We called this one really early in the year. We were talking about the value of this book, especially the second print. I had just picked up a number of second prints and was scrolling them away. This book obviously took fire in 2020. It saw unbelievable and completely out of this world increases in value. All the different covers for this book. I also was one of the people who bought one of the newsstands back before the craziness of the newsstand values really went off. I, at the time, had spent the most for a newsstand, almost $1,000, 900 and some odd dollars. I can't remember the exact figure. And I was a little nervous at the time, but immediately after I bought that book, that's when you saw the values really spike for Ultimate Fallout. So I still recommend this book if you come across. Obviously, they're valuable books, but I still think that there is some ceiling left to this book. Once the trailer comes out for the movie, which for the Spiderverse movie, I think we're going to see another round of spikes, potentially with the multiverse movie that's coming out. If Miles shows up with that, you're going to see a spike. So while it's an expensive book, I still think it's a book that has some room to have even more value. So pick them up if you can.
How much Morales?
Miles of Morales.
I will give you credit for that. I'll give you credit for the next one as well. Our first show was on April 12th, 2020. On April 19th, our second show, you called out Edge of Spiderverse #2. Good job.
Yeah, this has always been a book on, again, obviously I'm a big Spider-Verse fan, and this is the first appearance of Spider-Gwen. This book has really, really, really taken off. There are a variety of covers for this book. There are a number of prints. All of the prints are really seeing spikes. I personally like the third print for this book. I think it's the best of the prints out there in terms of value. But all said, this book is really on fire, especially the variant cover, which the land variant cover, which is just completely on fire right now.
Crazy. I had picked one recently. I think it was about a month or 2 months ago, and that is Futuretoy #1, which takes place between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #5. It's actually a crossover, and it does feature a pinup of the turtles inside Futuretoy. It's finally heating up. People are finally taking notice of this book. The 90-day average is up from $476 with the last sale of $535 for a 9.8. So while it's not skyrocketing to like Raphael levels yet, it is finally getting noticed. And speaking of turtles, you called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2.
#2. Yeah. At the time, I was buying up Turtle books and found out that Turtles #2 was just dirt cheap. I'm talking, I bought a 9.6 for $120, which I thought was just an amazing value, given that this is the second Turtle book ever printed. So since then, that same book that was $120 is now over $500 given the current pricing. So there's definitely been some upward movement on all of the early Turtle books. Any of the Mirage books, Turtle Mirage books, are really seeing heat, especially the oversized books, which are the first 4 books, and Raphael, if you want to include him, and Futuretoy. But Turtles market is unbelievably hot right now.
I have a 1 through 10 sitting at CGC, and I'm ready to call them tomorrow and say, look, #1, can you fast track these? #2, can you hold them for the Eastman signing? Because, of course, as soon as I sent them, they announced the Kevin Eastman signing event. But I'm a little nervous. I don't want a 9.4 or a 9.6 because of Kevin Eastman's potential man hands grabbing my book and ruining it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, most signature books I'm kind of iffy on, but Kevin Eastman, he's also known for his remarks on little drawings that he does on the cover, and I think that would have definitely add some value for the people who are interested in that kind of thing.
We'll see if I get off my duff and call them tomorrow. All right, from the winners to the undecideds. Let's look at the undecideds. We've got a few here where the jury's still out, and one of them is New Agents of Atlas #1, a book that just doesn't seem to either catch fully on fire or die down.
Yeah, this is a weird one. When it first came out, we both looked at it and said, wow, this is Marvel's stand in the Asian market. We're going to see these characters be groomed for people in China, South Korea, that market, and to give people characters they can identify with. So we thought, you know, as soon as that market opens up, and we start seeing interest from that market in comics, these are kind of books that are naturally, people would naturally gravitate to. And then we had this lovely thing happen that kind of stymied the market. I won't name it because I don't want us to
we'll get the algorithm.
Yes. And I think that has really been a factor. It's been a factor in pretty much all of both comics and the movies, obviously. But I think it's held this book back because that audience never materialized. They have other things to focus on. So I'm hoping 2021 is an opportunity for, we see streaming services coming on board as being an alternative to the movie theater. And that is actually perfect for this market where access to movie theaters may be difficult. Access to the internet is almost, is very prevalent. So I'm hoping we'll see some movement in foreign markets for Marvel properties. And this is one that if it strikes fire, there could be a huge demand for these early Agents of Atlas books.
Beyond the overseas possibilities, especially China, Marvel signed a deal with a Chinese media company to create new IP for that market specifically. That's where this could come into play. Mm-hmm. I love the story. Agents of Atlas is the concept, the group that just will not die. Greg Pak and Fred Van Lente came up with this, in the mid 2000s. It was a different team with Namora and the Gorilla Man and, a whole bunch of different people. And it's just that Jimmy Woo, it just keeps coming up with a new Agents of Atlas over and over again. And I'm here for all of it. It's a really well written, well done book. And it has a lot in common with another one of these Undecideds that I called this year, and that was Thunderbolts. Again, another book that will not die, another team that just survives. Thunderbolts #1, the jury is still out. Still 9.8s can be had for under $100. But guess what? Thunderbolts are coming back in King of Black. There is a new Thunderbolts coming out. I don't think there's a movie or a TV possibility because you have to establish them as villains first and then kind of bring them together and then do that spoiler thing that I won't tell you about at the end of the one, if you've never read it. But there is still potential because Thunderbolts is just, can you name another property from the late 90s that's new and still around?
No, and the story is so interesting, so compelling. These characters and I think it's an interesting storyline. I have a hard time seeing any MCU appearance in the near future. If those characters are developed over time through this next phase, maybe next phase or maybe the last phase, who knows?
It could always be like Crossbones from Civil War. There are little minor characters that you could pull together that people would have some familiarity with. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to have Norman Osborn leading this team or anything like that, like in the comics. So we'll see.
I'll see.
And the other Undecided I called, which is this is a stretch, okay? Hard Time #1, which is a great book by Steve Gerber that came out in the early 2000s about a boy who kind of gets involved in a school shooting and gets sent to prison for life, and then acquires these strange powers while in prison, and his struggle to survive behind bars. No big movement on this book at all. However, out of the blue, DC decided to collect this book in a trade paperback this year, which is really bizarre for a book that didn't sell well in the first place, only lasted 19 issues. And it makes me wonder, why did they collect this book? They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're not doing it because, we want people to read this. It's an underrated book. No, something's going on. My elongated man, Ralph Dimby nose, is twitching. I smell a mystery. So,
who knows with Marvel? I thought they were going to do something with Alpha Flight when the facsimile came out. Why would you put out a facsimile of Alpha Flight #1? Nobody was buying Alpha Flight #1, and yet they put money into it.
Yeah, so you've got DC doing it over here with Hard Time. You've got Marvel doing it over there. Mm-hmm. They don't do these things by accident. Marketing is planned. These things are seeded. So we'll see what happens with Hard Time. I still think there's something out there.
Yeah.
Now the losers. This next one we both picked.
Yeah. This was Silver Surfer #100.
The Marvel Watch Edition, huh?
The Marvel Watch Edition. There are a number of variants of this book. The Marvel Watch Edition has an extra 8 pages that surround the actual book with a black and white cover. It is a fairly difficult book to come by in high grade because that cover is very fragile, in my opinion, and very sensitive to dirt. Did not see any movement with this book. Didn't see anything at all. But you know what? You don't hit every ball that comes across the old plate.
I just don't think people know about it. Every time I put it up somewhere, people ask about it. What is that? I don't understand. And I explain it to them, and they kind of give this look on their face like, oh, the other thing is it is the non-hologram version of Silver Surfer 100 that's contained inside that wrap. So that non-hologram version, first of all, is rarer than the hologram version. So you've got a kind of combination of rarities here. So it didn't hit this year. We'll see what happens. And I think we're going to have to call our big miss of the year the Venom number 27 Error variant, the John Boy Myers Big Time Collectibles exclusive that got a double cover and shipped by accident to stores here on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a crazy furor over it the week it happened and the month afterwards. At one point, Raws were selling for $600 easy. 9.8s were asking for $1,000 or up. Few of them sold at that price. But take a look now. Raws are selling for about $350, and 9.8s are down to as low as $500 or less, with offers being made on buy it nows. So how fast they fall.
But this was a book that if you struck while the iron was hot, I mean, that first week, if you managed, as I know you did, John, if you managed to come across a copy at a reasonable price and was able to sell it during that initial heat, it wasn't bad. It's for the people who actually sent the books off to get graded, and they sat in CGC for a long period of time before they came back into a market that was softer than what it was there when you originally sent the book out.
To be fair, I did both. I had a raw that I struck quickly on, and then I sent 2 to be slabbed. They both came back 9.8, and they did not maximize what I thought they were going to do.
But it's a tough book. It's an error book. It takes the right kind of buyer to be interested in those exceptional types of books. And I think what happened was those buyers found copies, and there was a smaller market for the books that were out there after that.
And who knows, maybe it's a longer term play. Maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this will be like the Ultimate Fallout 4 1 in 25 variant. Who knows? Yeah,
you never know, especially with Donny Cates. You never know. I remember Venom number 7, the variant cover where Venom is on the cover and he's got the Infinity Gauntlet on his hand. I bought those from Frankie's Comics back in the day, and they just didn't go anywhere. And I poo-pooed them, and I ended up selling them. And now, if you had a copy of them now, they're $500 books for the Virgin. Hold on to them. Unless you need to sell something you think has potential, hold on to it, because you never know.
It's crazy. Just in general, the big drop, I think, in 2020 from the heights that it was at are 2 books in general, and that is Venom and Thor. Earlier this year, you could not keep a copy on the stands of either one of them. Venom was selling like crazy. The Venom 25. Do you remember the excitement over Venom 25?
Oh, yeah.
And the excitement over Thor number 4 and 5 with the Black Winter. So, and now it's like crickets. So is it over for Thor and Venom?
Donny Cates says that the Black Winter is coming back. So I would think that potentially that there's more movement available for Thor number 5, his first appearance. Venom, I don't know. We'll have to wait to see if the Venom movie spawns any interest in some of these books. But I have to fault both. I have to fault Marvel. As we were talking earlier, I have thoughts on this. I have to fault Marvel in the multiple copies that they are multiple releases of these books. You had Thor number 5 first print, then second print, and then third print, and then Thor number 6 prints. Right. People were in a frenzy and were afraid of, that FOMO hit. I want to have, the last prints of these books tend to be lower print runs, and they have a higher value because of those lower print runs.
Yeah.
So, fourth print's out. I need to get some of the fourth prints. Oh, look, fifth print's out. And
yep.
I am too. I have both for both Thor and for Venom. For Venom, I was going out and getting some of these remarkable covers, though, these store variants that were expensive, and it was because of this FOMO, this frenzy that hit the market during that period. People sobered up and realized that they didn't need 6 copies of Thor number 5 6th print, and that there was no value there, and the market pretty much crashed on those books. So for me, I'm holding on to them for the most part, because I think the Thor books potentially in a year or so, if Donny Cates continues with Black Winter, I'm assuming he's got some cadence. He's thinking about this. They may come back around and I can get my money out of them again. But the Venom books, I'm not as optimistic.
Well, I think we got into that whole thing of the later printings are going to be scarcer and scarcer because we saw it happen to books from 5-6 years ago, where the second and third prints, there were only 1,000 copies or 900 of America #2 second print or whatever in existence. Mm-hmm. That's not the case with Thor and Venom. They're very popular books, so every printing was ordered pretty heavily, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but the thing about like Captain Marvel 17 second print, that was a discovered rarity, right? Yeah. It happened after the fact. Mm-hmm. Marvel is sitting here planning printing for the 6th print of the book.
They're no dummies.
The first print is still hot on the shelves. So it's not a discovered rarity. It's a manufacturer demand. And I think that's kind of the scummy part of this. Marvel is milking an audience it's creating for every penny that it can before the whole house of cards collapse.
Well, the last time that happened as a collector, I think it was about 1996.
Is that 25 years ago?
I believe it's time for the 25-year rule. Yes, 1996. Welcome to a new 25-year rule as we move the focus to 1996. Marvel in trouble. You better run. It is 96's last issue palooza. Marvel and DC canceled many long-running books this year in order to do relaunch after relaunch. This is where it started. It did not end well in the case of Heroes Reborn, as we'll see. We're going to cover all of these last issues in the next few weeks, but this week is a different book. It's interesting that this book doesn't get a lot more love. It is Wolverine 100. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. It has a hologram cover, and the hologram's pretty cool. If you tilt it, it's a Wolverine like, Arr! And you can see his adamantium skeleton as you tilt him. And so it's really cool. It was the best-selling Marvel issue of 1996 in the entire year, so it's not incredibly scarce. It has a GPA 12-month average for a 9.8 of $98, but a 9.9 sold in 2014 for $1,135. And the interesting thing I find about this book, the hologram's cool, but there are 2 non-hologram versions. A direct edition that is non-hologram and a newsstand edition that is non-hologram. Anybody have a newsstand non-hologram Wolverine 100? Hit your boy up. I'm interested.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I knew holograms and all these types of trick covers were popular back then, but this is the first time I've seen this one.
It's pretty cool, and I've never seen it in the wild, so I don't know. Again, it's one of those books where maybe people don't know about it, maybe people don't give a crap. We say that every week about a book, I think. But
yeah, just because it's rare doesn't mean it's valuable.
Which is a perfect segue to our underrated books of the week. Richard, what is your pick this week?
This goes towards the 25-year rule, and I think it's appropriate that it follows up. One of the questions you have to ask yourself as a collector is, am I a long-term collector? In other words, am I going to be collecting in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And if so, you kind of want to look at books that will have value in the longer term. My pick for this week is Teen Titans Go, the #1 from 2004. This is a comic book that predates the Teen Titans Go television series by about 9 years.
Wow!
So it is a adaptation of the original Teen Titans TV show, which was out in 2003. It was very careful to make sure its storylines did not contradict the things from the 2003 series. The stories are just as wacky as they are in the the 2013 animated show. But there are just a whole bunch of interesting stories. It's also the issue number 23 of the series is the first appearance of Red X, which is a popular character in the original TV show. But this book is very easy to come by, at least in my experience, but it's not graded very well. There are only 72 books on the census right now, 46 of which are 9.8s. The 9.8 has a GPA of only $90, so it's not an expensive book. But we talk about this 25-year rule and the value of books like G.I. Joe #1 and Transformers #1 before the audience that desired them came of age. You could pick up Transformers #1 or G.I. Joe or $25, $50. I had 4 or 5 of them at $50 in my lawn box. And then we hit that magical number, that point where the audience, the buyers out there got of age and had money and were nostalgic and looking back. And now the Transformers #1 is $1,000 book. G.I. Joe #1 is also up there. And that's because there's that pressure from people looking for that nostalgic hit. 2004, this particular book came out. When that audience gets to the point where they're looking for their nostalgic 25-year rule, I think this is going to be one of those books. I love the series. My kids grew up watching the original Teen Titans book, our animated show. They transitioned to the Teen Titans Go, and it's a great story. Both of them are great. Both series are great. But the Teen Titans Go is a show that appeals to a younger audience as well as people who are more seasoned and veteran and grizzly like me. So I think it's a great play for $90, $100 for a 9.8 to sit in your long box for 5 years. I think it's a good play.
2029 is just 8 years away.
Yeah. You never know when it's going to hit, and you would be, spending that $100 now is like getting that Transformers #1 back in 2011, 20. And you could get it graded for $100 back then, and now you would have $1,000 for your $100 investment. So I think it's worth the chance. I bought my copy. It's on its way, and every now and then you can find them up on eBay. There are a number of them up there now. I personally would buy the graded. I wouldn't even bother with the raw at $100 versus $25 for a raw. It's the smart play to buy the graded book.
Well, my underrated book of the week is Star Wars #7. I'm talking the OG Marvel 1977 Star Wars series. This book is hugely important to me because I think I was 9 years old. I don't think I was 9 years old. I saw Star Wars 4 times in the theater. I was there when it first happened, and I had the toys on special order. I don't know, Richard, if you remember. They weren't out. So you had to kind of buy a gift certificate and wait for them.
For those kind of toys, right?
That first Christmas. And when Marvel announced they were continuing Star Wars beyond the movie with issue 7, it was like, whoa, new Star Wars stories, because the Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which is the first canon novel that goes beyond the movie, that didn't come out until February 1978. Star Wars #7 came out in late 1977. So it's actually the first canon expanded universe story. And I just don't think a lot of people pick up on that. And Star Wars saved Marvel Comics. I don't know if you ever read the story, but Lucasfilm in 20th Century had approached Marvel. Hey, can you adapt this movie? We would like to see a Marvel Comics adaptation. They thought that was a great way to reach that audience and get them excited. Stan Lee turned them down. Roy Thomas kind of had to pick it up and say, Stan, we really should do this. And he pushed it and he got it through. And Jim Shooter, who became editor-in-chief in 1978, has credited Star Wars comic books with saving Marvel Comics. They were in such deep financial straits at that time. Sales were down. Newsstand distribution was really drying up. This is right before the direct market hit. So Star Wars gave them a lifeline and let them hang on until that direct market really saved comic books, really. So I thought about this book, how important it was. I thought about you first, Richard, but then the second person I thought of, and I thought I got to have him on, is our friend from Spine Ticks. And if you're not watching Spine Ticks on YouTube, please subscribe right now. It's great. It's every Saturday night. They get drunk. They talk comics. Who wouldn't love that? Our friend, SithLordly.
Here I
am. We got to talk sabers at some point.
Yes, we do.
You boys comparing lightsabers all the time.
Boys will be boys. How you guys doing?
Good.
You have actually never met Richard yet in face-to-face, have you?
No, we're actually using words to communicate. This is wonderful. You know, John, you've been on Spine Ticks quite a bit, always a ham, and, you know, we'd love to have Richard sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it.
Into the gauntlet.
Yeah, make sure you have a drink. One thing I thought of when I was going through this book was you. And so I texted you earlier today and I said, hey, what do you know about Star Wars 7? You should come on and talk about it. And I thought your reaction was really interesting. Why don't you tell people about it?
Yes. Well, I own the book and I had read it sometime last year and I promptly forgot the story. So when we talked, I said, well, I don't know if I'm the right guy for this because I don't recall. But after after a wild night of Spine Ticks last night and I kind of recovered this morning, I decided to give it another read. And it was so bad. I remember why I, forgot it in a campy, cheesy way, bad. But it definitely makes me appreciate the Dark Horse Star Wars books, which are more serious and story driven. But, all kinds of colorful characters in this one. Crimson Jack. Jolly.
That story caused a big rift between Lucasfilm and Roy Thomas. They were besties because everybody was super happy that the adaptation had worked out. It had gone into multiple reprintings. And, Roy had come up with this story about basically, if you read it, it's the Dirty Dozen. Have you ever seen the Dirty Dozen?
Yeah, a while ago.
It's really, Star Wars has always been called a Western in science fiction drag, really. This is continuing that kind of Western theme, but doing it with the Dirty Dozen. So in issue 8, you have the introduction of everyone's favorite Star Wars character next to Jar Jar Binks, Jackson the Rabbit. So I know you're excited about Jackson.
And let's not forget about Don Quixote, the Jedi, because I did, go ahead and read the next issue, number 8. And it's funny that you mentioned the Dirty Dozen Westerns, because when I read this, I was thinking Magnificent Seven, right?
Same thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dirty Dozen. Yeah. Magnificent Seven's the better example. You're absolutely right. Dirty Dozen's the prison breakout movie, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds fun as well.
Yeah. I think I saw an adult movie called that once.
This went dark quick.
I know, exactly. It always does. The thing about this story was Roy was writing this, thank you, Magnificent Seven riff, and Lucasfilm was really upset. They did not like Jackson. They did not like Don Quixote. They thought the same thing you thought, was this is a little too goofy for us. And Roy kind of said, you know what, this isn't worth the hassle, and he quit the book. Wow. So this, while it's still considered canon, while it's still an important book, it's not very well remembered by fans, especially fans later generations.
Yeah. Well, I've got the full run of the old Marvel, but they're in their own short box that can't touch the other Star Wars books. They've been separated.
Cross-contaminate. You don't want that to happen.
That's right. We don't want any space rabbits hopping into the other boxes.
You're telling me you don't appreciate the later issues with Cynthia Martin art?
Well, you know what? I need to go through and reread all of those again since I was a kid.
It's interesting, the people that did that book back then, as good a seller as it was, they did not put their top talent on that book. You had Archie Goodwin writing it for a long stretch just because he was the editor-in-chief at the time and he needed to do something and someone needed to write the book. No one wanted that book. You have Carmine Infantino drawing a big stretch, which is like, it's 70s Carmine, so it's not Ryan Carmine. Ron Frenz started off on that book. It was like a place to test new talent, which is a weird thing considering how well it sold.
That's what I love about you. You're always like an encyclopedia of this comic book knowledge. Whether I'm watching you or you're on Spine Ticks or I'm on your show for the first time, I'm always learning something.
Oh, yeah. This is all from top of his head, too. This is not like pre-written down.
Imagine if I put it to like good use, like with calculus or like nuclear energy or something. I could cure cancer. Who knows?
Yeah, you could solve all kinds of world problems, I'm sure.
I doubt it. It could cost some. But yeah, what do you think about the fact that it is the first expanded universe story? Does that hold any weight? Am I way off base here?
Are you talking to me or Richard?
I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Buddy.
Okay. Yeah, you've summoned me. I thought that as I was reading it, wow, this is, the first story after that adaptation. And I'm thinking, let's just put this one off to the side, right? I didn't actually, I was going to go and explore like the retcon status on different things, but I just, I didn't have time today, but I think that'll be a fun project to go ahead and explore, it's all legends now anyway, right? Like the Dark Horse stuff. So I am kind of curious what today's Marvel thinks of those books. I know they've brought in some characters like Baylor Valance from Bounty Hunters, and he's got his own series now, which is interesting. But yeah, Jackson, I want, and maybe you recall, but I think there was like an Easter egg to Jackson somewhere where there was like a rabbit's skull or bones or something.
There
like
was
that.
something like that. And as a kid reading it, I have to be honest, I was super excited that the stories were continuing and there were new stories. And I was also like, what the heck is this giant green rabbit? I'm not, and, even at 9-10 years old, I felt that. And they kind of had a tough mission between the first movie and Empire for that first 42 issues, which was to keep something going, but don't change anything. Right. Don't do anything significant. Don't mess with any of the characters. So you have these storylines like the wheel in space, which is basically we're building a different Death Star. It just happens to be a wheel this time. And you have like, Darth Vader and Luke like circling each other, but never actually meeting for years. It's very strange.
That's a tough road to walk, to actually tell a story without anything being permanent, because you don't know what's coming for the next movie. So you're limited in what how you can impact the overall universe.
It's like when, back in the day, you got assigned to write a fill-in issue in case someone missed a deadline or writer or artist missed their deadline, and they could just put in a fill-in issue. And the fill-in issue had to have a start, a beginning, and an end. And it couldn't impact anything because you're sometimes being in the middle of someone's big, long saga. So basically, Star Wars was nothing but 42 issues of fill-in until Empire.
Yeah, and you notice I've got the Boba Fett behind me over there. So there are some books, for the covers that I really like, or the key appearance. But I tell myself all the time, this year I'm going to read everything in chronological order, all the comics, the books, and everything. And then you know how that goes. I get a little bit into it. I'm like, go do something else. So I never quite make it through a reread of these Marvel Star Wars books.
That's a lot of books to read.
Yeah, considering the expanded universe before it, right? The Old Republic and Revan and all this other stuff that they've stacked up ahead of it. So, I really enjoy.
The good news is if you do read it, like Dark Horse, I think put out a couple of omnibuses of the Marvel stuff. They're 17-page chapters basically, so you whip through it pretty quick because page counts were so low then, and they're 35 cents for 17 pages. I can't believe the industry survived, frankly.
You know what's interesting to me though is so I love the campy kind of writing, but for like Fantastic Four and X-Men, like those Silver Age books to me are so great. And a lot of people probably think the way I do about these old Marvel Star Wars. But for me, because it's, you're in a city, it's on Earth, it's more tangible. I kind of just feel like I'm watching an old black and white television show or something. Hey, Daddy-O,
you're right. Single digit Star or X-Men or Fantastic Four, awesome reads.
Yeah. All of those books. I love them.
I always wondered what would happen if Jack Kirby did a Star Wars story.
Did he do any?
He was there. He had come back to Marvel. He was doing 2001: A Space Odyssey at the same time that Star Wars was going. It's like, the thing is, Jack came back and he insisted, and he had the clout then. He's writing his own stuff. He's drawing his own stuff. He's editing his own stuff. No one's allowed to mess with it. So he did not want to work with other writers, and he didn't like working on other properties, really, even though he did do 2001. he liked doing his own stuff. So even if you read 2001, he's introducing his own character, Mr. Machine, who becomes Machine Man. You know, he didn't care. Yeah. So I just wonder if he had been convinced by Roy to draw the Magnificent Seven riff, if it had been slightly different, if it would have been slightly different, but we can always dream.
The whole time you're talking about that, the one thing that went through my mind was he was very set in his ways, and so am I. I'm like an old man now, set in my ways, and my routine is the same every day. And you try and get me to do something different, I'm like, you know.
He was in his 50s at that point, so
yeah. Hey, I'm almost there. Yeah,
you know, I can't relate, being only 32, but you know, I can just imagine. Okay.
Richard's been hearing this all his life, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
the duration of the friendship you guys have had.
For the 30 years we've been friends, I've been 29. So fine, we're used to it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
You can find our merry bunch at Spine Ticks on YouTube, and then you can find my personal channel at SithLordly on YouTube, as well as on Instagram. I'm there as SithLordly. So it's been great hanging with you guys, and I look forward to watching this when we see it.
All right.
Thank you. We'll all tune in. And for all your Star Wars needs, DM that guy.
Take care, guys.
Well, that is going to do it for us this week. Richard, thank you so much. I'm really happy and glad to be doing the show with you into a new year. Our 1-year anniversary is coming up in April. Can you believe it?
I cannot. I am excited to continue this on for the next year. I thank you for the brilliant idea of doing this show, because I have enjoyed every single episode, and I enjoy interacting with all of our viewers. Thank you so much for commenting, hitting us up on Instagram and making us feel special. I appreciate it, and I look forward to a happy 2021.
Thank you, guys. If you haven't subscribed, please do so already, and we will see you next week.
Stay safe.